tuning in today. I have a project that I wanted to share with my subscribers. So I have some coasters that have this lip on them, and this is pretty normal. Unless you dome the coasters, you usually end up with some kind of a lip, and you'll have little bits and pieces on the lips. Depending on how close you got to the edge of the mold, the lip may be pretty tall, like these. Like these have a pretty significant lip on them, or it might be a little more shallow. Trying to find a set here. So it's not quite as deep of a lip, but you usually end up with a lip. So if the lip's not bad, I have a video on my YouTube where I show, I use a nail file and I just kind of go around and sand the lip off, but it leaves just the teeniest little dull rim around the edge. And depending on the coaster, I don't always mind that. A lot of times I leave it like that. If it's the bottom of the coaster, it's not really that big of a deal. This is actually the bottom of this coaster. But I decided that I do want to pour a clear coat on these. I'm going to put my logo on them, pour a clear coat on top. And with this lip, that's really helpful when you're putting a clear coat on, because the lip will help keep it in. But what ends up happening is you can usually see that lip if the lip is not perfectly level. Like on these coasters where you can kind of see right here, the lip is not level. So what I'm going to do is sand these coasters down to make that lip as level as I can. I don't want to get rid of the lip completely because, like I said, I'm going to put a clear coat. This one already has my logo, but I'm still going to put a little, like a dome coat on these. But having that lip will definitely help prevent it from overflowing. So in order to sand these smooth, there's a lot of options. I mean, you could use a nail file and hand sand it. You could use like a little rotary sander. You could use a Dremel. You could use, what are they called? The little mouse sanders. You could use a belt sander. There's all kinds of things that you could do. But what I actually prefer to do is just sand them by hand. And I use just big sheets of sandpaper. And I start out with 120 grit for these. I also have 80 grit, which I use if I'm going to be doing a flood coat and maybe I've got some hair and I need to get deeper. Then I'll start with 80, but otherwise I start with the 120. And the rule of thumb is you double the sandpaper as you go up. So I start at 120, then I go to the 240 grit, 400, 800, sorry, these are upside down, 1500, and then 2500 and 5000. And then once I get up to the higher ranges, I'll actually squirt some water on the paper and do more of a wet sand. That helps keep the dust down, and it also prevents the paper from clogging up with the dust, so the paper lasts longer. So to start with, I'm just working on my flat table on my surface. So I just put the paper down with the grit up, just take the coaster and just rub it on the grit by hand. And it really doesn't take much. And then I just run my fingers around and feel. I just make sure that there's nothing sticking up, that it feels pretty even. So it's flat now because this is on a flat surface. And you don't have to use a lot of pressure. Still a couple little inclusions there. I don't know if inclusion is the right word. Little bumps. But like I said, you don't have to use a ton of pressure. All I'm trying to do is knock off the ridges and make this smooth. I also like this technique because it prevents scratching on the coaster itself. If I was trying to do this by hand with a sander or a file, I would probably end up scratching the coaster. It would slip out of my hand, or I'd angle it wrong, excuse me, or something would happen and I'd end up scratching this. Now again, I'm going to be coating this with clear coat, so it wouldn't really matter if I scratched it. But depending on what you're doing after you sand, you may want to, you know, not scratch it. You may not want to do any more work after the sanding process. So this is a good way to avoid scratching it. As long as you have that lip, the sandpaper won't actually reach the surface of the coaster. All right, so then we switch to the next grit. And that makes a huge difference just going up to the next grit. It's already a lot smoother. And you just keep going up grits. Okay, so now I'm at the 1500 and I've just got my spray bottle with the water. All right, so I'm just gonna dry this off. So now you can see that lip, it's still there, which again is fine, but this is a lot smoother than it was before, and it feels just as smooth and shiny as the rest of the coaster. Whereas the technique where I just use the nail file, the grit doesn't go up as high, and it's a lot more manual work. It's a lot harder to get it perfectly flat. So you could still feel the rough edges. And, you know, just looking at it in the light, the camera's not really picking it up very well, but that edge is still shiny. I know it looks a little dull, but I think that's just the lighting in here. To my eyes, it's very shiny. It matches the coaster. And that's what I was going for, because when you pour that dome coat on here, it's still, it's gonna go up to the edge, but it's not gonna cover the edge, so you want that edge to be shiny. So this is ready for doming now. So just wanted to share that with you guys. If you've got some coasters that you need to dome, but they have kind of a rough lip on them, this is a great way to get rid of it without a lot of effort. It's pretty easy to do. And it doesn't make a big mess. Like, you know, I use the sanders and Dremels and nail files and all those things, and it just makes a huge mess in my room. I've just got this one crafting room, and a lot of times if I've just poured resin, even if it's covered, I mean, you definitely don't want to fill your room up with dust, because you know how dust is. It always finds your freshly poured resin. So I hope this was helpful. Share any questions you have or tips that you have, or if you have any ideas for videos or anything that you'd like to see. So thanks a lot for tuning in. See you next time.